the US is missing out because there's so many brilliant people who would love to come to these shores, who are already living American values, who have big dreams, but it's not just dreams. It's also they're turning it into a reality. They have the grit, the determination, the ideas, the traction, the funding pathways, and we could be a lot more advanced and really accelerate if we were open to this. So I hope that's the direction this country can go in the future.
Hello and welcome back to Off to the Valley, the podcast that uncovers the stories of remarkable leaders who are shaping the future. I'm your host, Prateek Panda, and today we are joined by Sophie Alcorn, a trailblazing immigration attorney and founder of Alcorn Immigration Law. Sophie is a certified specialist in immigration law. She writes a column on TechCrunch and is also the host of the Sophie Alcorn podcast. Her work has empowered countless tech entrepreneurs and startups to bring their dreams to life in the United States. Sophie, it's an honor to have you on the show. I, for one, understand and value a lot the work that you do. So I'm definitely excited to have you on the show. And let's see if we can make this immigration less of a hustle than it is running your own company anyway.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Prateek. Thank you for that very kind introduction. I'm honored and I'm so excited to be here with you today. And I'm really looking forward to our conversation. So thank you.
Great. So before we get into the weeds of things, right, tell us a little bit about you. Who was Sophie like growing up and how has that influenced where you are today?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I was very shy as a child. I was a bookworm and I was scared to talk to people. So now I like host a podcast like you and give speeches and all this stuff. And I don't think I would have ever expected that when I was a little kid, but here we are. I grew up in Southern California. My dad was an immigration lawyer. My mom was his client from Germany. So as I like to say, I have immigration in my blood. And my dad was an incredible man and really inspired me. And when I was young, he had his immigration law practice. And I think two things really shaped me about that. One was he would make me go with him on Saturdays to send faxes to the INS in the 80s and 90s. And when I would dial the phone number correctly and the pages would go through, I would get a sugar cube as my reward. So I have this like Pavlovian response to immigration. So that's one. And the other is he often had really amazing clients from all around the world who would come to our house for dinner or invite us to their, exhibitions or conferences or trips. And so I had this really wonderful exposure as a child to just being like a citizen of the world. And it was very inspiring to be able to meet brilliant people from everywhere, making their dreams a reality. And those things really shaped me a lot.
So it sounds like you've basically extended all of that experiences and you're continuing to sort of experience that on your own now.
Yeah.
Do you feel like this is what you were always meant to do?
It's my calling. And I fought it for the longest time. And my dad didn't even know that this was what he was going to do. I would ask him, like, why did you end up becoming an immigration lawyer? You're a Midwestern farm boy from Chicago, the first person in your family to go to college. And he's like, I don't know. The universe led me to it. I fell into it. I didn't expect it, but I love it. But I resisted it because I didn't want to copy him. He encouraged me to, the world's your oyster, chart your own path. And I didn't want to just do it because my dad did it or because I could get a job from him or something. And so I really fought against it for a long time. I was like, no, I'm going to be an ambassador. And then I found out those are like political donor appointees. And I'm like, no, I'm going to, maybe run for office one day. I'm like, well, that's not like a job you can do right out. Like you have to do something first. I'm like, well, I'll litigate for immigrants' rights and sue the government. And I'm like, well, I would rather like know what I'm doing and help people first and understand how the system works. So like each step nudged me closer. But I worked for him for about 2 years as a young attorney right out of law school. And I burned out and it was so hard. I ended up deciding to start the phase of my life of having kids, and I just quit law for 4 years because it was so hard. But after my dad passed away, I decided that this is really what I want to do. I think it's the biggest way that I can make a difference in the world. And I decided to start my own law firm 10 years ago.
That is amazing. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about the experience that you said of taking a break for, for your kids and to become a mother. And
Yeah.
so many women go through that and find it challenging to come back, right? So we'll talk
Yeah.
about that in
Okay.
a few minutes.
Great.
But coming back to immigration, what you've been helping founders of all kinds, really, Y Combinator founders,
Yeah.
Sequoia companies, and so on. What do you think in the current times is the biggest challenge, right? So much is changing in the
Yes.
immigration landscape. What do you think are the top challenges for
Whew.
entrepreneurs as far as immigration is concerned?
Okay. Well, as of the time of this recording, um, the, the one that's just kind of starting to hit the news is that the whole glory days of the visa Dropbox stamping situation is coming to an end. So everybody's going to be required to go through interviews. So that's going to create backlogs and restrict international travel once again, just as we were digging ourselves out of the hole from the COVID backlogs. So that's kind of going to be a challenge for international founders who have multinational businesses and teams and who need to go meet, vendors and suppliers and investors and things like that. I think the other main challenge is the legal uncertainty. We don't have a startup visa. In addition to the temporary uncertainty of international travel, the other really basic challenge for startup founders in the United States who are immigrants or, aspiring immigrants is just the lack of visa certainty and clarity. 10, 15 years after President Obama had working group meetings all around Silicon Valley asking, how do we improve the innovation landscape, listening sessions, what do founders need? We still don't have a clear immigration pathway for the world's most brilliant people to be able to create their startups in the United States. And sure, as an immigration attorney, we can try different pathways. We can try to get people O1s. We can, utilize the L1 pathway where it's possible. We can figure out ways to use the H-1B, but it would be so amazing if we simply had a pathway that said, oh, you're a founder, you have a startup, you're doing AI, or you have a product, you have a patent, you have some investor, you're going to create jobs. Like, yes, we want you to innovate here. Like, we really, really need this. I got to help create one version of the startup visa, which actually passed the House of Representatives in the America Competes Act. It didn't make it through the Senate in the Chips and Science Act, but it was called the Like Act, and I got to work on it. It was Representative Zoe Lofgren's office. It was really exciting. But we really need, I think we're going to need pro-immigration presidential leadership to bring something like that through. But until we have it, the US is missing out because there's so many brilliant people who would love to come to these shores, who are already living American values, who have big dreams, but it's not just dreams. It's also they're turning it into a reality. They have the grit, the determination, the ideas, the traction, the funding pathways. And we could be a lot more advanced as a country and, help lead the world and really accelerate if we were open to this. So I hope that's a direction this country can go in the future.
Absolutely. And the lack of a startup visa or a clear startup visa is definitely a gap. So, with that gap being there, today, what are the top sort of pathways for international startup founders that they should be considering if they are thinking about US immigration?
The most popular visa for a bootstrapping founder who maybe has some researchy PhD type background, or maybe like a smaller prior startup mini exit in their home country, is the O1. And we use that in a lot of ways for CEOs, CTOs, people with business backgrounds, science, engineering backgrounds, design backgrounds. You can really leverage it creatively. And it's great for a bootstrapping founder, a solo founder, a pre-fundraising founder, because the salary requirements are very low and it's a very flexible option, because if you structure it properly, you can actually have multiple streams of income. So if you're bootstrapping your startup and you need consulting income on the side, and then eventually you want to maybe have two startups and maybe be an advisor for equity in your friend's startups, and then you want to be a VC scout and get carry, and then you want to get paid to give a speech, like you could do all of that on an O1, even though it's not directly through one employer. So the O1's great. Lately, we've also been doing a ton of H-1B transfers for people leaving big tech to start their own projects. And this is a beautiful pathway for somebody who's already been in the US, who's been through the lottery, who's just like stuck waiting for their priority date to become current. They don't want to sit out the AI revolution, and they have savings, or they have already been offered angel investment. It used to be that it was extremely difficult for people to get an H-1B at their own startup. They had to worry about employer-employer relationship and get a random American on their board and dilute their equity. And it was awful. So many people lost a lot of control and money as a result of those prior regulations. But the really great news is that is no longer necessary. We are currently routinely getting H-1Bs approved for founders who are bootstrapping their companies. They have not gotten any investment yet. They're solo founders. They're going to be the CEO, and they currently own 100% of their business. We can still transfer the H-1B to their new startup. And that can be for full-time work, for part-time work. They can keep their day job. They can quit their day job. So that's a really flexible, wonderful option. So those are kind of my two favorite, right?
That's amazing, actually. I mean, H-1Bs are definitely one of the most popular visas for international immigrants to come to the US for work. But what you are suggesting is that even on an H-1B, a startup founder could still potentially be working for another company while working on their startup as well, right?
Yes. Now, and you reminded me before, I should have my lawyer disclaimer. Everything I'm talking about is for educational purposes only. This is not to be construed as legal advice. If you need legal advice, go talk to an attorney where you can have a private, personal consultation. And I'm happy to chat with people offline. But okay.
Yeah, the H-1B is one of the most popular visas, right? And one of the constraints, at least what I was aware of before, is that you work full time for the company that sponsors your
two
H-1B.
jobs. That's what you were asking about. Okay. So I'm an immigration lawyer. Once again, outside of my practice area, this is an intellectual property consideration, but I actually did a podcast about it, and I'll share the link with you in case you want to share it with your listeners. But here's the basic situation. If you have a job in a company such as a big tech company, and they invent a lot of things, and if you invent something while you're working there, they can argue that whatever you invented is their intellectual property. So you have to be really clear that it was created outside of company time and not with company materials, like your own personal laptop at night on your home Wi-Fi, not in relation to your job. But if you're still working in that company, there's kind of a risk to your IP for your startup. So it's safer to be able to fully quit and then start your new thing. But if you're an immigrant, you can't take like a 6-month sabbatical and then have like a crazy, insane coding session one weekend 6 months later and like invent the next, AGI thing. Because like you can't be unemployed that long in the US for 6 months. So a lot of people use their 60-day grace period to transfer out and start their own company. But let's say you work for an accounting firm, but you have an idea for a dog SaaS pet care company. There's probably no IP issues there. And so that immigration combination that we would do is, you can keep your day job at the accounting firm and we can get you a 5-hour-a-week H-1B on the side concurrently to work at your own business. And then if you ever want to increase your hours later, we can do it. And that's really great too, because then you have layoff insurance. So if the main company lays you off, you're actually not in a 60-day grace period. You are still maintaining status even with a 5-hour-a-week H-1B.
That is amazing. And it's really mind-blowing to learn this. Like I have hundreds of friends who are on H-1Bs, and one of the biggest struggles is, this part. So just so that I'm also getting this right,
Okay.
you could have a concurrent H-1B
Yes,
along with another H-1B.
that's absolutely correct.
Okay,
You got it.
that's interesting.
You got it?
Amazing.
Yay.
So one thing that we did not talk about, which I feel like I've seen some folks use this pathway, and I would love to get your opinion, is the L1 path. And so many founders start their companies in their home countries. I've got friends, like I myself also started in India, then moved my company to Singapore first before I moved to the US. And there is enough operations in place. You worked at your own company for a fair bit, and then you create a US parent or subsidiary, and L1 is an option. Do you see that as still a viable option? What are some challenges in that process?
It's absolutely viable. It's great, but it only works if you already have that company overseas.
Mm.
So, and you have to work there for a year. So if you're already in the US in a tech job, in order to qualify for an L1, you'd have to create an overseas company, hire a bunch of people and leave and go work there for a year and then come back, which is doable. I've definitely had some clients do it, but there's like a lot of your life that you're uprooting or putting on hold when you need to do that, unfortunately. So most of my clients who utilize the L1 pathway typically have not lived in the United States for a long time yet. Maybe they visited or they were here as a student, but they've become a startup founder in India or Germany or wherever, and they get their company to a certain size there. And then as they're looking to scale, they need to do their, go to market in the States and figure out US product market channel fit. And maybe they want to do enterprise or whatever, but it's a great place to expand. And maybe they want to, raise Series A, or they're in AI and it's like too regulated in other countries. So those are the typical reasons for my clients why I see L1s being most useful.
Okay, great. And like I have this weird interest of researching immigration law for so many different countries.
I think that's totally normal. Why wouldn't you?
So I love researching about immigration to different countries, and the US, Canada, Portugal, Singapore, whatever, name it. I love it. But one thing, while I was researching about our episode today, I only recently found out about this thing called the International Entrepreneur Rule, which is not a visa, it's a parole program.
Yes.
What is that?
Oh, I had so many hopes about it, and I haven't seen any statistics to contradict my hypothesis that I remain the single attorney in the United States who has filed the most number of those, which is not to say a lot, because the statistics that USCIS released were that like 50 people have ever applied for that. But it's a beautiful dream, but it wasn't set up properly. It is a regulation. It's called parole. It's like the other types of parole you hear about, like Ukrainian parole or stuff like temporary protected status. this administration is not into parole programs. And it is the result of those listening sessions that President Obama did in Silicon Valley in 2010. And it was released at the very end of his administration. At that time, they projected that 2,500 founders a year would qualify. For today's numbers, the requirements are something like raising $311,000 from qualified U.S. investors that have a track record of investing in 5 companies previously, or getting like something like 100K of U.S. grants from various state, local, federal agencies, or comparable evidence, similar evidence, or less than those numbers. And it's beautiful because multiple founders from the same company can get it. Your spouses can work. You can come here for 2.5 years. You can get a 2.5 year extension. But the problem is, it's not a real visa. It's parole. And the first administration of President Trump promptly tried to squash the program. They canceled it. The National Venture Capital Association sued and won based on a process issue that the administration hadn't followed the rules properly for how to cancel a program. So it was left open. And then the Biden administration tried to resurrect it. That's when I filed all those cases, but it doesn't allow for premium processing. So many of my cases lingered for 3 years. All the founders had to go get O1s instead. It wasn't useful. Everybody abandoned their applications. Only a handful of people have gotten approved. And if you get approved, there is no clear visa stamping process. It's very convoluted. You have to leave the US, get some weird boarding foil in your passport, and re-enter. So it's very cumbersome. So I would not recommend anybody use it today, sadly. But I was really into it for a while.
Yeah, the moment I researched it, I was like, this sounds so good.
It's amazing.
But it's one of those things that's like too good to be true. And it's one of those projects that got to 90%.
Yes.
And nobody cared about the last 10%.
Yes. And then the other thing is, the reason the adjudications were taking so long, apparently the people who are put in charge of these cases within USCIS are not the O1 people who look at most founder issues. It's the EB5 people who are really concerned about fraud, about source and path of funds, money laundering, all those things. So they're looking at it with this different high scrutiny lens. So it's just so sad.
Okay. So for every founder, especially all early stage founders that are listening to this, there are many folks who are probably at the instance where, AI has made building things a lot easier. There are a lot of other challenges around it, obviously. But for all the founders or potential founders listening to this, they're early, haven't even done fundraising, may or may not have even registered a US entity yet. How would you tell them their immigration plan, and what should be a realistic timeline to keep in mind? Because I feel that one of the biggest things that bother you more is unreal expectations. And then is there something that they can start planning and preparing for? And what does that route look like? What does that timeline look like?
Okay, so I think if you're inside the US versus outside of the US, it's a little bit different. And it also depends on, are you qualified now, or do you need to do stuff to become qualified? So if somebody's in the US and they're qualified now, we can probably get them a new status within 3 to 4 months. If somebody's outside the US and they're qualified now, we can probably get them in within about 6 months. If you're not qualified, then it depends on what you have to do. And if you're going to become qualified for an H-1B, it's a much quicker and easier process, assuming you have capital, than it is to become qualified for an O1 if you're starting from scratch. So I've seen people set up, if people have savings, I've seen them set up companies and be ready for an H-1B in like 3 weeks. if somebody has to fundraise, that's uncertain how long it will take. If somebody wants an O1, the quickest I've ever seen is I love her to death. She's just completely crazy. She was a product manager at a FANG, and she went from not qualified to qualified for an EB1A in 6 weeks. And she'd been product managing something that 1 billion people use. Now, most of my clients like to take 6-12 months to become qualified for an O1 or an EB1. So that's kind of the time range. I hope that helps.
Yeah, I think that resonates with my case as well. And when I did my first O1, obviously, I said I love researching about immigration. So I did a fair amount of research. But one thing that I would tell all founders listening to this is start early, because get in touch with an immigration attorney so you know what is the viable path for you. And if you think, for example, it is the O1, you might actually meet a lot of requirements, but the first step is being aware about the requirements and then figuring out how are you going to document all of it, right? So for me, the biggest challenge was finding time to work on a bunch of this documentation while also running the startup, while managing day-to-day stuff. More often than not, as a founder, your personal stuff gets pushed to the back burner as you're trying to fight more
Totally.
important fires.
Totally.
But like from my learning, I would say like try to prioritize that, work with an immigration attorney that could have almost like a project manager of sorts working with you,
Yeah.
pushing
Yeah.
you. Like the
Yeah.
second time when I did my O1, that's what,
That's great.
uh, that's the help I got. I told them upfront, this is the part that I'm bad at. So
That's
I
amazing that
want
you
you
had the
to, I,
self-awareness. Yeah.
yeah, I was like, I want you to
Yeah.
keep checking in with me, keep telling me, Pratik, you were supposed to send this, whatever, 3 days ago.
It took me a while to figure out that that's the best way to practice, but we got it now. And I actually created a new role last year and restructured my law firm completely to be able to deliver that. I was like, wow, this paralegal role isn't cutting it. The attorney shouldn't be project managing. How am I going to do this? And now we have client journey coordinators who are
Amazing.
paralegals, project managers, and customer service who are there to answer your questions and keep your case on track. And it's amazing what a difference it makes. So I think
That's
that's
amazing.
so wise. And the other thing that, yeah, I just commend you for that self-awareness. I think the other really big piece of this that people underestimate is the, I don't know, like it's some sort of cognitive load, discomfort thing that has to do with imposter syndrome, tall poppy syndrome, cultural differences. But for somebody who's lived a quiet, humble life of achievement, trying to please people and do the right thing, it's really hard to start thinking about
Yeah,
like bragging and talking about how amazing I am. So like just
totally.
having people to like talk you out when you want to crawl, you want to curl up and you're under the table and like cry of like, I don't know if I can do this, but like having those friends and cheerleaders and accountability partners who can help you get perspective, I think is so important.
That is absolutely true. I've been through that as well in my experience. You often think like, because in your environment, something is normal and you think like, okay, there's no big deal about this.
Right.
And now you have to make a big deal about it because in general terms it is, or you have to find a way to tell your story the best
I've
possible
even
way,
seen
right?
it with like top executives. They're like 45, 50 years old. They've been in tech. They have 2014 priority dates. They're still waiting around. They're like, I've signed all these letters of recommendation for my direct reports. They all got O1s and EB1s, and I never got around to it. And
Yeah,
am I qualified? And I'm like, yeah, you
yeah,
are. It's fine. So it can be hard. But I think over the last 2 years, like the word about O1 and EB1 has spread like wildfire.
yeah,
It like literally happened. It's like I have this visual of like, I can see, Thanksgiving weekend 2023, all these like expat group chats on WhatsApp, like, and watching the EB1 thing like
yeah,
spread from like dinner table to dinner table at Thanksgiving. Cause like, President Trump was starting to give campaign speeches and like that's when people started talking about it, and like everything just like exploded after that. So an important note there is whatever you read about from message boards from 2023 or 2024 online for how to become qualified for an EB-1A is probably not true today in 2025. It became much stricter, a much more volatile adjudication standard. So just, make sure that your evidence is really close to your very narrow field of extraordinary ability, very niche types of accolades. And that's like if people are talking about it on Reddit, it's probably not a good type of evidence to pursue.
Yeah, that's a great point. And maybe you can double click on that a little bit, because what does that really mean for a regular person?
Don't
For example,
apply to Judge Globey or Stevie Awards anymore. It's not going to work. Being an IEEE senior member isn't enough. Making $200,000 a year won't cut it. So like it's stuff like that.
great. So that's good. But on that note, right, mistakes. What are some mistakes that you see more often from founders that are trying to apply for any of these visa categories, whether they are funded companies or bootstrapped? What are some top issues that you see?
Well, one thing is not starting to research the process soon enough, being like an ostrich sticking your head in the sand and then leaving it until it's like almost too late, and then not budgeting enough time for the process like you spoke about. Another is, I don't know if this is a mistake. It's just a challenge, but working with so many founders, we're like hyper aware of it, and I built the firm around it. But many founders have to be extremely focused and direct, and they try to emulate what they think Steve Jobs was like, which can, I don't know, this is not a mistake. I'm just totally chiming in with something completely random here, Pratik. But founders can be very rude sometimes, and they don't appreciate how much work, care, attention immigration providers have to give to them to do a good job on their cases. So understanding it's a very complicated process. You are going to have to learn some things. This will take some work on your end. Even if you have a chief of staff, you can't just like give everything to them and expect them to do it. This requires your personal involvement. Just like having those clear expectations so that the team can actually support you to do a good job, keeping the lines of communication open and like not making assumptions and asking if there's like, or like informing the team if there's an important critical deadline that's coming up in your life. Like that sort of a thing is really important to the easy flow of the case.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And I remember when I got my first O1, it's 2019. Not a lot of people had O1s back then.
Yeah.
And I used to tell, like, when people asked, I would say, like, I'm on this O1 visa, and they would ask, okay, what is this O1? And I'd be like, it's called an extraordinary ability visa or Einstein visa. And they'd be like, oh, wow, that sounds great. And I would say, this would be a running joke. I would do that. The only thing extraordinary about that visa is the extraordinary amount of paperwork you have to do to get it. So, in line with what you are saying, it is an extraordinary amount of work.
It really is.
So it's important to sort of acknowledge that and really look at, I think I was very humbled by the process itself. I remember my first petition was 655 pages.
Yeah.
And I went to the office to sort of print it out, and it was this huge stack of paperwork.
Oh my God.
And it had been maybe 4 or 5 months of working together with my immigration attorney at that point. But I only, all of that just settled in when I went to the printer to print it out. And I was like, oh my God, we've been working on this for the last 5 months. Wow. And it's a lot of work, a lot of patience on both sides, right? And it's incredible the amount of work that goes into this.
It's a ton.
And just recognizing that can humble you a lot. And that goes to like all the work that folks like you do, right? To make it happen for people like me.
I really really funny conversation like 2 weeks ago with a founder in New York who's, very successful. And I called and we got his EB1A approved. And I'm like, and I just wanted to say, I'm so proud of my team's work. And we got this done so quickly with no RFE. And he's like, oh, yes, I acknowledge because you're a founder. So you think those things are cool. Yes, I see. Okay, what about the adjustment of status? Yeah, okay, cool. Glad I can help.
Oh my God. That's
So it's
funny.
fun. It's okay. I get to meet really wonderful people from all around the world. Everybody's different. It's amazing.
Yeah, great. So, as we come closer towards the end of this recording, I want to ask you a few more rapid fire
Okay.
style questions. What's one common myth about immigration visas that you still sort of regularly debunk?
Oh my gosh. The employer-employee relationship about H-1B and O-1. It's just this vestige. Like 10 years ago, it was a thing. I probably other immigration lawyers are telling people they still need to be conscious of it. But like I've done thousands of founder cases and I work on this all the time. And so I know how the landscape has shifted. So just like if you're a founder, please don't give away your company because you think you have to for immigration. Like, please talk to an experienced startup immigration attorney first.
Great. What's a change you would like to see in the US immigration policy to better support founders? I know I think we talked about the startup visa,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Startup visa for sure. I mean, if this magical gold card could come through, that would be kind of exciting. I don't know how or when they're going to do it, but hey, that would be another option. You could raise more money and then just get that, right? So that could be
Yeah.
something I'm watching that's interesting. But like, we need
Interest.
immigration reform, frankly, is what we need. So
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see pitch decks of the future where you go to raise money and
right.
there's a line item on the gold card.
But I
Like,
think a lot
here's the
of VCs
$500,000.
would be really excited to de-risk the founder. That's like
Absolutely.
the thing.
I think all top tier VCs that are investing millions of dollars into startups,
Yeah.
the one thing that I have seen consistently in the last 15 years of doing this is that they always want the founder to be in a more relaxed state about everything else.
Yeah, they're
About
like, oh,
like,
let's sell some secondaries. Let's just sell some shares on the secondary, and let's get you a house now. Like, we want
yeah,
you to be taken care of. If your wife needs daycare, like, let's put the nanny on the. You can bill it to the company. It's okay, right? So yeah,
yeah, good investors have always been pro making life easy for the founder
yeah,
and get them to focus entirely on building on innovation.
absolutely.
Great. If a founder could retain only one piece of advice from this entire conversation, what would you want them to take away out of this?
Follow your heart. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Awesome. Great, Sophie. That's a great way to sort of end the podcast. Thank you so much for taking our time. Immigration
Thank you
is
for taking
a
it. So
fun.
much fun talking with you, and we covered so many
Yeah.
things. This was such a fun conversation.
Awesome. Yeah, I like I said, I enjoy talking about immigration. So this was a fun conversation for me as well. I'm glad that we could make this happen. I'll share your details out because I know a lot of founders continue to reach out to me
Amazing.
also to get, contacts of
Yeah.
immigration
And
attorneys that I've worked with.
that would be wonderful. And I shared the IP related podcast that I did with another attorney to talk about that. And also, I do have a complimentary online class that anybody can take. If I can just mention that for a second, Pratik.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
It's called Alcorn Academy. It's 15 videos, and over 1,000 people have taken it. Many have gone on to get O1As, EB1As, EB2NAWs. It's free. You just put in your email address. You'll end up on my newsletter, and you'll get immigration updates. And what people have told me who've gone on to be successful with their visas and stuff is what they appreciate is that I actually took the time to look at the regulatory language for each requirement, map it out to different types of career paths, to imagine different types of evidence, and then look at standard RFE language to see what type of evidence you might need to not get an RFE. So that's available, and you'll have that link, and I hope that can benefit everybody.
That is amazing. I was going to ask you about some free resources
There you
that people
go.
could learn from.
There you
And
go.
yeah,
Wonderful.
amazing. You made it happen.
Great.
Great. Thank you so much, Sophie. I really appreciate the time that you've taken out to have this conversation. Thanks for all the amazing work that you do. This was a very fun conversation.
Thank you so much, Pratik. An honor to be here. And thank you so much for having me.
And that wraps up today's episode. Before we sign off, I would like to thank you for your support and thanks for tuning in. If you loved today's episode, then don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and never miss an episode. Be kind, be happy, challenge the norm. I'll see you folks again for the next one.